folks. This is Raleigh Cosplay. This is the final section in my Intro to Blender tutorial. This is part 4, additional concepts. And we're just going to go over some additional ideas that we didn't have time to touch on in the other sections. First, we're going to be looking at the idea of quads and normals. If you've never used Blender before, these are probably unusual words for you. If you've used Blender before, this is old hat, this is very standard. But it's just something to be aware of as you're dealing with your meshes in order to make them so that they're going to print most easily and subdivide surface most easily. We're going to be looking at applying textures. You can see some texture that was applied to the Dragon Wrath staff there to make it print as a wood texture. Applying textures is a little bit more sophisticated in that we have to use a couple of different parts of the Blender software to do it. But once you get the hang of it, it's as straightforward as anything else and produces some really, really cool effects. We'll then look at best practices for exporting your STL files to make sure that when you bring them into your slicing software, they're scaled properly, that they don't have internal issues, and that they print properly. And then we're going to go over some other resources on the web and on YouTube that will be useful for you as you start your Blender journey. So let's go ahead and get into the program. All right, so here we are in Blender. And we're going to talk about two concepts, normals and quads, which are very straightforward, but they're unique to Blender. You may run into an issue where you've got a pretty normal looking object, everything seems to be quite normal with it, but it behaves weirdly. It doesn't print properly, or you try to move things around or apply modifiers particularly and something goes wrong. And it may be that the normals, that is the direction the faces face, inward or outward, has gotten flipped. This is actually quite common in the plane extension workflow. The way you can check that is super simple. You come up here to these views and you come to face orientation and you select that and you see, oh, blue means it's facing out as it should be. Red means we're looking at the back of that face. The normal is facing inward. That means it's flipped. Very simple to fix. You just select the face. Make sure you're in edit mode, by the way, not object mode. And you come here to Mesh, Normals, Flip. And now it is facing out with the rest of them, and it's going to behave much more normally. So that's what the term normal means. It just means the direction a face is facing, inward or outward. And you want to make sure that they're all blue, all facing outward. Again, that's up here under face orientation. The other term I want to introduce is the idea of a quad. So let's come back to object mode to get rid of this mesh and add a new mesh. And let's bring in our little monkey friend. Hello, monkey friend. And what you're going to see, it's even clearer here in edit mode, is that this complex curved shape is really made up of lots of individual faces, and those faces typically have 4 vertices. We call that a quad, and that is the most stable shape in Blender. So even when you're making a very complex shape like this, you want to make sure that your planes have 4 vertices and 4 edges. Now you can get away with 3. You see some triangles here. That's okay. There's a couple of these that have I think those are the only triangles. You've got a few of these that have, yeah, no, that's a quad, it's just sort of hidden. So there, you're going to have the occasional triangle, but most everything here, even in a complex shape, is going to be a quad because it just is going to render much better. It's going to print much better. You certainly don't want more than 4 vertices. If you do, take that face, split it into parts so you have a quad and 2 quads, or a quad and a triangle. Because if you try to, for example, let's come into object here. If you try to apply subdivision surface, let's say, and you've got lots of pieces that are not quads, it's going to make that subdivision surface really bad. Here, as complicated as this object is, we can really smooth it out a huge amount with our subdivision surface. Look at that. Look how nice that is. And it still holds together because virtually all of the shapes, if we come here into edit mode and see the true shape of it, these are all still quads. And as we subdivide them, they remain stable. And they don't intersect with each other and that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that your faces are quads. They have 4 vertices, 4 edges, except the occasional triangle if you really, really have to. Okay, and now getting into some more sophisticated stuff. We're going to talk about applying textures. Textures are super, super cool. And they take it so that instead of just curving or sort of rounding out a face, you can apply a texture to it. To do that, you're going to come here while you're in object mode. It only shows up in object mode. To this Textures tab, you're going to come here to New, and you're going to need to have a file, a black and white texture file. You can find these online very, very readily. But it's going to be something like this. It's a black and white image that is a texture. So this is stone in this case. You can get stone, you can get wood, you can get bricks. You can find them very readily online, but they have to be black and white. They're called texture maps or that sort of thing. Because what happens with this is that we are going to automatically lower each vertex on the object wherever it's dark, and we'll raise it up wherever it's light, and we're going to project this texture onto it. In order to do that, though, since we're literally moving every vertex up and down based on the texture, we need to have lots of vertices to do this. So let's go ahead and add. This is most obvious on a cylinder. Oh, of course, it can apply to anything. Now, this is a very basic cylinder we've just added. It's got 32 vertices, so 32 of these faces around the edges. That is not nearly enough to be able to project a texture onto it. We need many more vertices. So let's actually go up to 500. This is going to slow down your processing quite a bit. So applying textures really slows down processing. But now if we go into edit mode, we see, oh yeah, instead of 30 of those, we've got 500. It looks much smoother. Now, these aren't vertices, these are edges, right? The vertices are just here along the top, so we need to add some vertices. We can do that by coming here to Loop Cut, putting it here, so this is one loop cut, but we want way more than that, so let's say 500 here. So we're going to do 500 cuts along this edge. It's going to take a moment because that's a lot of math, but we're going to come back and we're going to see, yeah, now we've got 500 of these cuts, so we've got huge number of vertices. So we're going to now apply this texture, and we are going to move those vertices up and down based on the texture that we have added. So in order to do this, we're going to need to select these faces. This is a little bit fiddly. Give me just one moment here. So we're going to come here to select. We're going to select a face here. Select a face. Good. And then the command here is Control L. And that's going to select every face that touches that face. Now, we don't want to do this to our top faces, so we're then going to hit Shift and select our top, Shift select our bottom. That will unselect those and leave all of our other faces selected. So you need to select all of the parts you're going to be moving up and down. And then we need to make a map to show how to move up and down. To do that, you're going to go here to UV editing. This is the only time you're ever going to touch these top menu buttons. UV editing. And what this black square is actually all of those points that you just selected on your cylinder. They've just been stretched out. We're going to come here to this icon and choose that image that we loaded in as a texture. And now we see, oh yeah, there's that stone image that we had before. Now we want to align all the vertices that we're going to be moving up and down to match that image. So we've selected them all here. We're going to scale them, and we're just going to scale them up, and then we're going to move them and move them down. Of course, you can do. Sorry, there had a bit of a glitch trying to get this scaled properly. We've now scaled our vertices to match our image. We're going to come back here to Layout, and now we're actually going to apply that mapping to our vertices. We're going to come here to Displace, because we're going to be displacing the vertices up and down. We're going to select that texture that we just made in UV. It's going to look very weird. Then this is important, coordinates UV. That means we're going to use that map we just made. Still looks horrible, but that's because we are applying it way too much. So we're going to take this down to 0.1, and now it looks much, much closer to that stone texture, but this is probably still too much. 0.01, Ah, now that looks more like the thing. And so now we have applied this texture to it, literally by moving each vertices as we come here into edit mode. We've moved them. Well, we haven't applied it yet. So if we were to now apply, go back to object mode and apply this, we have taken all of those vertices and we have moved them up and down to give us this texture along the surface. Now what this done, of course, is made a very, very complicated object. You can see all those faces curving in and curving out. And so you want to apply that modifier only at the very, very end of the process. I have fallen into this trap before, because if you now need to make modifications to this object, it's going to be very difficult because it is now a very complex object. So just something to keep in mind about applying textures. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is exporting these things for printing and some tips and tricks for that. Let's get our monkey back. Let's go ahead and apply that modifier, that subdivision surface. Make it really, really smooth, really nice, because we want to print it. Maybe we're going to even resin print it or something. Now this is a pretty complicated object. If we try to export it, it might run into problems. Now, there's two ways we can fix that. Here in our side menu, you can go to 3D Print, and you can click Check All, and it will look at all of these things, and it will tell you where there are any problems with them. And then you can clean them up. You can use Make Manifold. You can do all kinds of fancy, sophisticated things here. This actually isn't too badly off. Even though we are smoothing it a great deal. But I'm going to show you the easy way to do the fixes. And this comes from Artisans of Vol, so I know it is valid. But to export it, we come to File, Export. We always want to do it, export as STL. You're going to make sure you have checked selection only, because otherwise it's going to export everything in the whole scene, which is fine if you've got one object, but if you've got dozens of objects, things get very complicated, and you may end up with pieces that don't actually belong what you're trying to print. You want to select Scene Unit, and when you set up your units, you chose centimeters, you want to do this as 1. If you chose meters, you want to choose this as 0.1. So you're just making sure that each unit here is what you actually want it scaled to in the printer. And you want to choose Apply Modifiers. If, for example, as I've done here, you've forgotten to actually apply your modifiers, which of course are just rules, they don't actually exist on the object yet, this will apply all of them in order as it gets exported. So it's a nice safety net for you. It can sometimes cause some weird behavior, so it's better to apply your modifiers as you're doing the rendering, but if you need to, it's covered here. So we're going to export it onto the desktop. Good. Now, like I said, there aren't too many problems about this because this is a well-designed object, but if there were, you could either fix them here manually, or if we look here on the desktop, here's our object. This by default opens with the Windows Object Viewer. And when we select it and we choose Import Model, if there's a problem, there'll be this red box and say one or more objects are invalidly defined. Click here to repair, and you do so, and it does magic behind the scenes. What it's really doing is making things manifold. It's removing internal geometry, and it by and large will solve most of the problems that you have. Occasionally there's still some issues. You see there's this hole that is created around the eye. And so in this case, you might want to go back into Blender and maybe bring down the number of renders. We had it being very high there. But this is a great way, and then run this same check again. But then if we save this and then bring it into our slicing software, I use the Prusa Slicer, of course, because it's a great piece of software, we're going to find that the issues are going to be largely taken care of by that. So that is just some information on best practices for exporting and fixing that tricky internal geometry. So finally today, I want to introduce you to two other resources on YouTube that you certainly want to look at. The first of them is Kamui Cosplay, as I mentioned in the Extending Planes workflow. This is their Blender tutorial. Benny does an incredible job with this. You certainly want to look at it, as it will go in greater depth of that workflow, give you some other perspectives, totally something you want to watch. The other source I can point you toward is an incredible channel called Artisans of Vol. I still go to this channel regularly whenever I have any questions. He does incredible content, and it's very specific to problems within Blender. So if there's something that you want to do, if you want to project text onto a surface and have it emboss or engrave, if you want to make horns, if you want to scale things in weird ways, if you want to add plugins, which is a whole other area of Blender, this guy is who you want to go to for that. It's an incredible site full of short, very specific, very good videos. And so if you have any questions that weren't covered by any of these videos, I promise you he has a video specifically covering it, and it's much, much better than anything that I would do. So take a look at Artisans of Vol. Both of those resources, of course, are listed in the description below. And that's sort of pretty much everything that I had to cover. Hopefully this course has been of some use to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments here. You can find me at RaleighCosplay.com or on Instagram at RaleighCosplay. I am a teacher, so sharing this information is what brings me joy and happiness. So if you have questions, if you run into problems, feel free to just reach out to me. I'm always happy to try to help if I can. At this point, I'm supposed to tell you to like and comment and subscribe, la la la, you know how that goes. If this has proven useful, please do those things. If not, I do hope you have tremendous joy and excitement in your Blender journey. Thanks again.